I never thought I'd be sitting here as CEO of a Fortune 500 company telling you how my parents took my life savings to pay for my sister's wedding. But life has a funny way of coming full circle. 6 years ago, I was just another college graduate with dreams and $43,000 saved from years of summer jobs, scholarships, and extreme budgeting. Money I'd carefully set aside for my future business venture. Then came the call that changed everything. Emma, we need to talk about your sister's wedding. We're a little short. That little short turned out to be my entire savings account. Money I never got back. Money that was taken without asking. Just an expectation that I would understand because family comes first. What my family didn't know was that their actions that day didn't break me. They remade me. And when I walked into our family reunion last month as the new CEO of Meridian Tech, the look on their faces, well, let's just say they couldn't breathe. If you've ever had someone take advantage of your kindness or been the family afterthought, this story is for you. Hit that subscribe button and let me show you how sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even, it's getting ahead. Growing up in suburban Connecticut, our family dynamic was clear from day one. Jessica was the star, and I was the supporting act. My sister was the homecoming queen, the valedictorian, the golden child who could do no wrong in my parents' eyes. Don't get me wrong, Jess is talented and beautiful, but our parents' favoritism was undeniable and painfully obvious to everyone, including our extended family. Dad, a mid-level manager at an insurance company, and Mom, an elementary school teacher, weren't wealthy by any means, but somehow, when it came to Jessica, money was never an issue. Dance lessons, private tutoring, a car for her 16th birthday, they made it happen. Meanwhile, I babysat the neighbors' kids to pay for my SAT prep books and worked weekends at the local diner to save for college application fees. I remember my high school graduation dinner vividly. We went to Olive Garden, nothing fancy, but it was my celebration. Halfway through the meal, Jessica announced she'd been accepted to a summer program at Yale. Just like that, my graduation dinner became Jessica's pre-Yale celebration. My parents ordered champagne, which I couldn't drink being underage, and toasted to our family's future Yale graduate. I sat there, acceptance letter to State University tucked in my purse, knowing it wouldn't elicit the same reaction. Emma's always been the practical one, my mother would say at family gatherings, as if my practicality was somehow a consolation prize for not being exceptional like my sister. She's so good with money, so responsible. What they didn't know was that my practicality was born of necessity. No one was going to hand me anything. I had to build it myself. Despite everything, I excelled in college, double majoring in business and computer science. I worked 3 part-time jobs while maintaining a 3.9 GPA. I participated in every entrepreneurship competition the university offered, winning 2 of them. With each small success, I saved and planned. By graduation, I had that $43,000, my ticket to independence, to starting the tech consultancy I'd been meticulously planning. Then came Jessica's engagement to Bradley, son of a prominent family in Greenwich. The wedding quickly spiraled from an intimate gathering to a 300-person extravaganza at the Westchester Country Club. It's important for your father's career, Mom explained, though Dad had been passed over for promotion 3 times already. When they asked to borrow my savings, it wasn't really a question. It was presented as my contribution to the family, my duty as a sister. Emma, you'll make this money back in no time with your skills, Dad said, hand already extended for my bank information. And just think how connected you'll be after Jessica marries into the Wellington family. They know everyone in finance. What they didn't know, what no one knew, was that I'd already been quietly building connections of my own. A professor had introduced me to his former student, now a venture capitalist looking for promising startups in the fintech space. We'd been having coffee meetings for months, discussing my ideas, refining my business plan. The day before my parents emptied my account for Jessica's hand-calligraphed invitations and peony centerpieces, I'd received an email. "Emma, let's talk seed funding. Your algorithm has serious potential." I never told my family about the email. I never told them about the meetings. And as I watched my savings disappear into the black hole of Jessica's perfect day, I made a promise to myself. They would never know about my success until it was too big to ignore. Jessica's wedding was scheduled for June, a perfect summer ceremony with perfect weather at a perfect venue. The 6 months leading up to it were a marathon of family obligations that I was somehow expected to participate in, despite having my own life to rebuild from scratch. With my savings gone, I moved into a tiny studio apartment in Brooklyn with a roommate divider that barely gave me privacy. During the day, I worked entry-level at a tech firm, learning the industry from the inside. At night, I built my prototype and refined my business plan with the VC who'd taken interest in my work. His name was Michael, and unlike my family, he saw something in me worth investing in. "Your family took your savings?" he asked incredulously when I finally explained why I needed the funding sooner than planned. "For a wedding?" The confusion on his face validated what I had felt but couldn't articulate, that what had happened wasn't normal, wasn't fair. Meanwhile, the wedding preparations became all-consuming. Every family dinner, every weekend, every phone call revolved around Jessica's special day. I was expected at cake tastings, floral arrangements, venue walkthroughs, all while trying to secretly launch a startup. "Emma, you need to take time off for Jessica's bridal shower in the Hamptons. It's a whole weekend event," Mom insisted one evening over the phone. "Mom, I can't just take off work. I'm new at my job, and it's your sister's bridal shower. What could be more important? The Wellingtons have rented out a beachfront property. Do you know how it would look if you weren't there?" I bit back the words that threatened to escape. "How about how it looked when you took my future to pay for hers?" Instead, I requested the time off, falling further behind on my prototype development. The bridal shower was as extravagant as expected. Jessica received gifts worth thousands: crystal champagne flutes, designer luggage for the honeymoon in Bali, a weekend cooking class in Paris. My gift, a handmade photo album chronicling our childhood, seemed quaint by comparison. Jessica opened it, smiled politely, and moved on to the next box containing a Tiffany bracelet from our aunt. "Oh, Emma's gift is so thoughtful," our mother said, in that tone that indicated it wasn't quite enough. "She's been so busy with her little job in the city." Later that evening, I overheard Jessica and her bridesmaids by the pool. "Your sister seems nice," one of them said, the hesitation clear. "Emma's always been the sensible one," Jessica replied, echoing our mother's words. "Not everyone can be ambitious, I guess. She's content with her small life." I slipped away before they could see me, my cheeks burning with a mixture of humiliation and anger. Small life? I was building something they couldn't even imagine. The final straw came 3 weeks before the wedding. I had secured my seed funding, $150,000 to develop my financial algorithm app, and was scheduled to meet with potential developers. The same day, my mother called in a panic. "Emma, there's been a disaster with the wedding favors. The custom crystal champagne flutes arrived broken. We need you to go to the supplier in the city and sort it out, today." "Mom, I can't. I have an important meeting that—" "Emma Catherine Reynolds, your sister has been there for you through everything. One day. She's asking for 1 day of your time for the most important day of her life." The guilt trip worked, as it always had. I rescheduled my meeting, potentially jeopardizing my relationship with key developers, and spent 8 hours at a crystal supplier arguing over replacement flutes that cost more than my monthly rent. When I finally made it home that night, I had a voicemail from Michael. "Emma, the developers went with another project since you weren't there to pitch personally. I'm sorry, we'll regroup, but this sets us back at least 3 months." I sat on my bed in that tiny Brooklyn apartment, surrounded by wedding favor samples and bridal magazines my mother had sent home with me, and something inside me snapped. 3 months. Jessica's wedding had just cost me another 3 months of my life. The night before the wedding, at the rehearsal dinner, I sat at the far end of the table, away from the immediate family and the Wellingtons. My father stood to give a toast, champagne glass raised high. "To my beautiful daughter Jessica and her wonderful fiancé Bradley. Your mother and I have given everything to make tomorrow perfect for you, because you deserve nothing less than perfection." Everything. They had given everything, including what wasn't theirs to give. My fingers tightened around my water glass as Dad continued. "We've spared no expense, because some things are worth every penny. Some dreams are worth any sacrifice." Any sacrifice, as long as it was my sacrifice, not theirs. As Jessica beamed and Bradley's parents nodded approvingly, I made another silent promise to myself. This would be the last time my dreams were sacrificed on the altar of my sister's perfection. Jessica's wedding day dawned with picture-perfect weather, exactly as she'd hoped. The Westchester Country Club looked like something out of a bridal magazine, with white roses and peonies adorning every surface. As a bridesmaid, because how would it look if you weren't, I spent the morning helping Jessica get ready, pinning her hair and listening to her fret about whether the string quartet would play the right version of Pachelbel's canon. "Emma, you're so lucky you don't have to worry about all this wedding stress," Jessica said as the makeup artist applied her false eyelashes. "Your life is so uncomplicated." The other bridesmaids, all sorority sisters from Yale, exchanged knowing glances. Poor Emma, with her simple life. I swallowed the retort that threatened to escape and continued pinning her veil in place. The ceremony went off without a hitch. Jessica was radiant. Bradley looked appropriately smitten. Our parents beamed from the front row, my father already misty-eyed at the thought of walking his favorite daughter down the aisle. I performed my bridesmaid duties flawlessly, held my bouquet at the exact right height, and smiled for every photograph. It was during the reception that everything fell apart. The ballroom was stunning, with crystal chandeliers and centerpieces that had cost more than 3 months of my rent. The band played softly as guests mingled during cocktail hour. I stood by the bar, nursing a glass of champagne, when Bradley's father approached me. "You must be Emma," he said, extending his hand, "the sister with the tech job." I shook his hand, surprised he knew anything about me. "Yes, that's right. Bradley mentioned you work in fintech. Our investment firm is always looking at promising startups in that space. Anything interesting happening at your company?" Before I could answer, my father appeared at my side, laughing a bit too loudly. "Oh, Emma's just getting started in the industry. Entry-level position, learning the ropes. Nothing like what your firm would be interested in, Richard." The dismissal stung, but it was familiar territory. What wasn't familiar was the fire it ignited in me. 3 months of setbacks because of this wedding. Years of being the afterthought. A lifetime of Emma's just and Emma's only. And now, when a genuine professional connection appeared, one that could actually help my fledgling company, my own father was shutting it down. "Actually," I said, my voice steadier than I expected, "I recently secured seed funding for my own fintech startup.
We're developing an algorithm that predicts market fluctuations with 87% accuracy, significantly higher than current industry standards. Bradley's father's eyebrows shot up with interest. My father's face registered confusion, then disbelief. Your own startup? Funding? Dad sputtered. But you're working that entry job in Brooklyn. That was a cover while I developed my prototype, I explained, now addressing Bradley's father directly. We're currently in talks with 3 major financial institutions about implementation. 87% accuracy?
That's impressive, Richard said, genuinely intrigued. We should talk after the wedding. Here's my card. As he walked away, my father grabbed my arm, his fingers digging in slightly. What are you playing at, Emma? Don't embarrass us with made-up stories. That was the moment, the exact moment when 6 years of being the family afterthought crystallized into perfect clarity. I gently removed his hand from my arm. It's not made up, Dad. I've been building this company for years. The seed money I got was $150,000, more than 3 times what you took from me for this wedding. His face paled. Took from you? We borrowed. No, Dad, you took. You never asked if I could afford to lose that money. You never asked what plans I had for it. You just assumed that whatever I had saved couldn't possibly be for anything important. The dinner bell rang, saving him from responding. But the damage was done. Throughout the 5-course meal, I could feel his eyes on me, see the whispered conversations between him and my mother. When the time came for toasts, my father approached the microphone, champagne in hand, notes in the other. He began his prepared speech about his perfect daughter and her perfect new husband, but his voice lacked the confidence from the rehearsal dinner. Halfway through, he paused, looked directly at me, and went off script. Family is complicated, he said, causing a murmur of confusion among the guests. We think we know our children, but sometimes we miss things, important things. My mother was frantically signaling for him to get back on script. Jessica's smile had frozen in place. To Jessica and Bradley, he concluded hastily, and to new beginnings for all. The awkward toast set the tone for what followed. During the father-daughter dance, I watched from the sidelines as Dad whispered urgently to Jessica, whose face cycled through confusion, disbelief, and then, most surprisingly, shame as she looked in my direction. Later, as the cake was being served, Jessica cornered me near the restrooms. "Is it true?" she demanded. "You've been building a company with actual investors?" "Yes. And the money Mom and Dad took?" "Was my startup capital, yes." Her perfect makeup couldn't hide the flush spreading across her cheeks. "Why didn't you say anything? Why didn't you tell them no?" I looked at my sister, really looked at her, perhaps for the first time. Would it have mattered, Jess? Would anyone have listened? She had no answer, and in her silence, I found my freedom. I didn't stay for the bouquet toss or the sparkler send-off. I slipped out quietly, ordered an Uber, and headed back to my tiny Brooklyn apartment. 3 text messages from my father lit up my phone during the ride, but I didn't read them. Whatever crisis of conscience he was having would have to wait. I had a company to build. The weeks following Jessica's wedding were surprisingly quiet. No calls from my parents, no text messages asking why I'd left early. Even Jessica, usually quick to point out any perceived slight, remained silent from her honeymoon in Bali. The only person who reached out was Bradley's father, Richard, with an email requesting a meeting to discuss my startup. That meeting changed everything. Richard didn't just want to hear about my algorithm, he wanted to invest, significantly. $500,000, he said across the table at a Manhattan restaurant far too expensive for my budget, for a 15% stake. Your accuracy metrics are too good to ignore. I nearly choked on my water. Mr. Richard. Richard, please. Richard. Does Bradley know you meeting with me? After what happened at the wedding, he waved his hand dismissively. Family drama is irrelevant to good business, Emma, and what you've created is good business. With Richard's investment, everything accelerated. I moved out of my cramped Brooklyn apartment into a proper office space in Manhattan. I hired developers, a marketing team, compliance officers. Within 6 months, our beta platform was being tested by 2 major investment banks. Within a year, we were profitable. The irony wasn't lost on me that the wedding that had nearly derailed my dreams had ultimately connected me with the investor who helped make them reality. Life has strange symmetry sometimes. It was around the 18th mark when the tech industry started to take notice of what we were building. TechCrunch ran a feature on the algorithm revolutionizing fintech. Forbes included me in their 30 under 30 list. And then came the offer from Meridian Tech, one of the largest financial technology companies in the country, to acquire my startup for a sum that made Richard's investment look like pocket change. The acquisition included a stipulation that I would join Meridian as head of their innovation division, a C-suite position with equity and a salary package that left me momentarily speechless when the offer letter arrived. Through it all, my family's silence was deafening. I knew they were aware of my success. Jessica had sent a terse congratulations text after the TechCrunch article, but no calls, no visits, no real acknowledgement. Then, 3 years after the wedding, as I was settling into my role as Meridian's youngest ever Chief Innovation Officer, my mother called. "Emma," she said, her voice smaller than I remembered, "we're having a family reunion next month. Your father's 60th birthday. We'd like you to come." I almost declined. Almost. But curiosity won out. "I'll check my calendar," I said noncommittally. 2 weeks before the reunion, the news broke. I was being promoted to CEO of Meridian Tech following the retirement of its founder. At 32, I would become one of the youngest female CEOs of a Fortune 500 company. The announcement made the Wall Street Journal, Bloomberg, CNBC. I didn't call my parents with the news. I wanted to see their faces when they found out. The reunion was held at my parents' house, the same split-level colonial where I'd grown up. Walking up the familiar driveway felt surreal after everything that had happened. I'd considered arriving in a chauffeur-driven car. Meridian had insisted on providing me with a security detail after the CEO announcement, but decided against the theatrics. This wasn't about showing off. It was about closing a chapter. Jessica opened the door, her perfect smile faltering slightly at the sight of me. She looked exactly the same, yet somehow diminished. "Emma," she said, recovering quickly, "you came." Inside, relatives I hadn't seen in years milled about with plastic cups of punch and paper plates of catered food. Conversations hushed momentarily as I entered, then resumed with greater intensity. I caught snippets. The one from the news. CEO now? Can you imagine? My father was holding court near the fireplace, looking older than his 60 years. He saw me, froze mid-sentence, then excused himself from his conversation. "Emma," he said, approaching cautiously, as if I might disappear. "You made it." "Happy birthday, Dad," I replied, handing him a small wrapped package, a vintage watch I knew he'd admired years ago, before Jessica's wedding consumed our family's financial and emotional resources. He took it, clearly surprised. "Thank you. We've been seeing you in the news, the CEO announcement. It's incredible." "It's been a busy few years," I said simply. My mother appeared at his side, eyes darting nervously between us. "Emma's being modest," she said with forced brightness. "Everyone's been talking about her success. Our little Emma, a CEO. We always knew you were special." The revisionist history was almost laughable. Almost. Did you? I asked quietly. The direct question seemed to catch her off guard. Of course we did. You were always so practical, I supplied. Sensible? Content with my small life? The color drained from her face as she recognized her own words reflected back at her. My father shifted uncomfortably. Emma, he started, then stopped, clearly unsure how to proceed. What happened with your sister's wedding? Taking your savings? It was wrong. We know that now. It was the closest thing to an apology I was likely to get, but it wasn't why I had come. It doesn't matter anymore, I said, and realized as the words left my mouth that they were true. It worked out for the best, actually. An uncomfortable silence fell between us, broken when Jessica approached with her husband Bradley and their toddler son in tow. Emma, Bradley said warmly, extending his hand, congratulations on the Meridian position. My father hasn't stopped talking about how he was your first major investor. Says it's the best decision he ever made. Jessica's eyes widened slightly. I had never told my family about Richard's investment. Your father took a chance on me when I needed it most, I replied. I'll always be grateful for that. The implications hung in the air. When my own family had taken from me, Bradley's had invested in me. As the evening progressed, the dynamics slowly shifted. Relatives who had barely acknowledged me at family gatherings past now sought me out, asked about my work, my life in New York. My cousin's teenage daughter, quiet and serious like I had been, pulled me aside to talk about her interest in computer science. Everyone says I should focus on something easier, she confided. Something more feminine. I recognized the same family patterns trying to repeat themselves. What do you want to focus on? I asked her. AI development, she replied, her eyes lighting up. I've been teaching myself Python. I handed her my business card. Email me. We have an internship program at Meridian that might interest you. Later, as the party wound down, I found myself alone with my father in the kitchen. He was washing dishes, a task I'd never seen him do when I lived at home. Your mother hired a cleaning service for tonight, he explained, noticing my surprised expression. But I told her I wanted to do this myself. Gives me time to think. He scrubbed a platter with more force than necessary. I keep thinking about what you said at Jessica's wedding. About us never asking what plans you had for your money. You were right. We just assumed that my plans couldn't be important, I finished for him. He nodded, shamefaced. We were wrong. So wrong. And now look at you, CEO of Meridian Tech. He shook his head in wonder. How did we miss it, Emma? How did we not see what you were capable of? It was the question I'd been waiting years to hear, but now that it hung between us, I realized the answer no longer mattered. My success wasn't defined by their recognition of it. It's okay, Dad, I said, taking a plate from his hands to dry. You see it now. As I prepared to leave, my mother pressed a small box into my hands. It was your grandmother's, she explained. We always intended to give it to Jessica for her wedding, but, well, I think Grandma would have wanted you to have it. Inside was my grandmother's sapphire ring, the one she'd worn every day of her married life, the one she'd promised to me when I was 12 and had admired its deep blue stone. She always said you reminded her of herself, Mom added quietly. Strong-willed, independent. I didn't understand what she meant until now. I slipped the ring onto my finger, surprised at how perfectly it fit. Thank you. As I drove away from my childhood home, the sapphire catching the streetlights, I realized that the revenge fantasy I'd harbored for years, of returning triumphant, of proving my worth to a family that had undervalued me, felt hollow now that it had come to pass. What I felt instead was something unexpected, compassion. For my parents, trapped in their narrow vision of success, For Jessica, whose perfect life had turned out to be perfectly ordinary. Even for my younger self, so desperate for validation. The true triumph wasn't in making them see my worth. It was in no longer needing them to. I won't pretend that one family reunion healed all the wounds of my childhood. Real life isn't that neat, and real families certainly aren't. But something shifted that night. In me, in them, maybe in all of us. These days, my relationship with my family exists in a new space. Not close, exactly, but not estranged either. Jessica calls occasionally, asking for career advice now that she's considering returning to work after staying home with her children. My parents send birthday cards and follow my company's news. My cousin's daughter is thriving in her second year of our internship program. The money they took for the wedding? They tried to pay it back about a year after the reunion, a check for exactly $43,000. I tore it up and used the funds instead to create a scholarship for young women in tech from underprivileged backgrounds. Turning that old pain into something meaningful felt right. Looking back at my journey from that desperate night after the wedding to where I am now, I realized that sometimes the worst things that happen to us lead to our greatest strengths. My family's actions forced me to be resourceful, to find allies outside my comfort zone, to believe in myself when no one else did. If you're watching this and feeling underestimated or overlooked by the people who should support you most, remember, your worth isn't determined by their ability to see it. Your dreams don't require their validation to come true. Build anyway, grow anyway, succeed anyway. And someday, maybe they'll see what they missed. Or maybe they won't, but by then, you'll be too busy changing the world to notice. If this story resonated with you, hit that subscribe button and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Sometimes knowing you're not alone in your struggle is the first step toward overcoming it. Until next time, this is Emma Reynolds, reminding you that the best revenge isn't getting even, it's getting ahead.